The air on the parade ground at Forward Operating Base Sentinel tasted of diesel fumes and baked earth. It was a flavor Master Chief Petty Officer Reese Dalton had long ago accepted as a condition of her work. The October sun hammered down on the assembled troops with the kind of heat that made the horizon shimmer and dance. Reese stood in the third rank, motionless. Her small frame was a study in stillness among the fidgeting of younger soldiers. Her Navy working uniform, crisp and utilitarian, was a dark blue island in a sea of desert camouflage. She was an anomaly, and she knew it. At 5'3", she barely cleared the shoulders of the men around her. But those who knew, truly knew, understood that size meant nothing in the wars she fought. General Marcus Ironwood stood at the podium. His voice was a gravelly boom, amplified by speakers that crackled in the dry heat. He was a man carved from a recruiting poster, all jawline and confidence, all brass and bearing. A four-star general who believed victory was a matter of volume, invisible force. His speech was a predictable tapestry of valor, sacrifice, and the indomitable American spirit. Reese listened to the cadence, not the words. She analyzed it like a signal. Predictable modulation, high amplitude, low information density. The ceremony dragged on. Names were called, citations read. Soldiers marched forward with proud smiles, received their medals, shook the general's hand for the waiting cameras, and returned to their places. Each one a moment of glory under the merciless sun. Then the announcer called her name. Master Chief Petty Officer Reese Dalton. She moved with an economy of motion that was often mistaken for hesitation. But it was not hesitation. It was precision. Every step calculated, every movement deliberate. She walked to the center mark, halted, and executed a salute so crisp it could have been pulled from a training manual. General Ironwood looked down at her. Something flickered in his eyes. Confusion, perhaps, or disdain. The kind of look a man gives when he encounters something that does not fit his worldview. He took the citation from his aide, a tall captain with a rigid spine and empty eyes. Master Chief Petty Officer Dalton, Ironwood began, his voice losing some of its booming warmth, is awarded the Bronze Star Medal for meritorious service, for providing critical signals intelligence support during Operation Serpent's Coil, leading to the successful neutralization of a high-value enemy network. The language was sterile, bureaucratic. It was the only language cleared to describe what she did. It spoke of support and intelligence, words that, to a man like Ironwood, sounded passive, secondary, words that conjured images of air-conditioned offices and computer screens, not blood and bullets. He looked from the paper to her, then to the assembled task force, then to the embedded media pool, their cameras trained on him like weapons. He saw a narrative opportunity. He put the citation down. In my day, he began, his voice adopting a folksy, condescending tone, support meant you were miles from the wire, safe and sound. It meant you were pushing paper while real soldiers were pushing the fight. A few of his acolytes chuckled, nervous, sycophantic sounds that rippled through the front ranks. Reese's expression remained unchanged. Her eyes, dark and steady, were fixed on the middle distance as protocol dictated. Her jaw was set, her breathing even. She gave him nothing. This operation, Ironwood declared, his voice rising with practiced authority, was won by trigger pullers, by the infantrymen who kicked in the doors, by the men whose boots were on the ground, by the warriors who put themselves in harm's way. He picked up the velvet box containing her medal. He opened it. The bronze star glinted within, catching the harsh sunlight. He stared at it for a long moment, as if weighing its worth. Then he snapped the box shut. The air went still. The low hum of the base generators seemed to fall silent. Even the wind stopped. The entire parade ground held its breath. "We reserve these," Ironwood said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial growl for the cameras, "for the warriors at the tip of the spear." He unpinned the metal from its cushion inside the box, and in a gesture of profound public contempt, he slipped it into the breast pocket of his own uniform. The motion was casual, dismissive, as if the metal were a stray coin he had found on the ground. "We'll find a more appropriate recipient for this," he said. "Someone who was actually in the fight." He looked directly at Reese. A smug challenge burned in his eyes. He was expecting a reaction, a protest, tears, anger, anything to validate his dominance, anything to prove she was weak. He received nothing. Master Chief Reese Dalton held her salute for one more perfect second. Then she dropped it cleanly, performed a flawless about-face, and walked off the parade ground. She did not look back. She did not falter. The sound of her footsteps on the gravel was the only noise in a suddenly vast and uncomfortable silence. The cameras kept rolling, capturing the rigid line of her back, capturing the moment a four-star general publicly humiliated one of his own, capturing the beginning of something that would echo far beyond this dusty parade ground in Afghanistan. Back in the sterile confines of her temporary quarters, a windowless, containerized housing unit she shared with a bank of humming servers, Reese Dalton did not rage. She did not weep. She did not punch walls or throw equipment. She sat at her small steel desk and powered on her hardened laptop. The machine booted without a sound, its screen glowing in the dim light. She was calm, methodical. This was what she did. She processed information. She found patterns in chaos. She turned noise into signal. She accessed the secured network and downloaded the official video feed from the ceremony. Her fingers moved with practiced speed across the keyboard, executing commands with the fluidity of a concert pianist. She isolated the relevant segment, from the moment her name was called to the moment she exited the frame. She saved the high-definition clip to a triple encrypted solid-state drive. Then she cross-referenced the media roster for the event: Associated Press, Reuters, Fox News, the New York Times, all witnesses, all with cameras, all with global reach. She opened a new file, a simple text document that served as her personal log. The cursor blinked on the empty screen, waiting. She typed. Date: October 23, 2012. Time: 14:37 Zulu. Location: FOB Sentinel Parade Ground. Incident: Public Award Ceremony. Presiding Officer: General M. Ironwood, USA. Event: Recipient of Bronze Star Medal. Citation for Operation Serpent's Coil. General Ironwood publicly questioned the validity of the award, citing a distinction between combat and support roles. He retained the physical medal. Official video and media witnesses documented the event. Action taken. Withdrew from ceremony. Filed this log. She saved the file. The entire process took less than 10 minutes. There was no emotion in the words, only facts. The facts were sufficient. The system she served was built on process and documentation. An emotional outburst was noise, easily dismissed. A documented procedural breach was a signal, clear and persistent. It could be ignored for a time, but it would remain in the logs, waiting. With the report filed, she felt a familiar need, a need for pressure and silence, a need to reset. She changed into a plain black swimsuit and walked across the base to the combat diver training facility. It was a deep, cylindrical pool housed in a cavernous metal building. The water was a cold, chlorinated blue. It was usually empty at this time of day. She stood at the edge, regulating her breath. In, hold, out. The air in the building was heavy with the scent of ozone and chlorine. She executed a simple, feet-first entry, slicing into the water with minimal splash. The cold was a welcome shock, a sensory reset. She sank to the bottom, 20 feet down. She settled into a cross-legged position on the smooth concrete floor. The world above vanished. The harsh sunlight, the dust, the noise of the base. All of it was replaced by a deep, resonant silence, broken only by the sound of her own controlled breathing as she began a breath-hold drill. The pressure of the water was a uniform, comforting weight on her entire body. Here there were no politics, no egos, no grandstanding generals. There were only the laws of physics, buoyancy, pressure, and the body's demand for oxygen. She was not a support person. She was a weapons system. Her primary components were pattern recognition and an absolute mastery of the electromagnetic spectrum. General Ironwood saw a small woman who worked with computers. He could not comprehend a battlefield measured in hertz and decibels, a battlefield where victory could be won by isolating a single packet timing anomaly in a terabyte of meaningless static. He could not imagine a fight that took place in the invisible space between antennas. His failure of imagination was not her problem. It was, however, now a documented fact. She surfaced. Her lungs burned. Her mind was clear. She repeated the descent. The ritual of pressure and release, washing away the last vestiges of the public humiliation. It was not an insult to her. It was a flaw in the general's understanding of modern warfare. And flaws in her world were liabilities to be corrected. The provocation, when it came, was as clumsy and predictable as Ironwood's ceremony speech. It happened 2 days later in the main dining facility. The cavernous room buzzed with the clatter of trays and the murmur of hundreds of conversations. The smell of overcooked vegetables and institutional meat hung in the air. Reese sat alone at a small table in the corner, eating methodically. Her focus was on the field manual she was reading, signal processing in contested environments. Her tray held simple food, protein, carbohydrates, fuel. 2 Army captains approached her table. They moved with a proprietary swagger, their trays held like shields. They were from General Ironwood's personal staff. She recognized them from the ceremony. Captain Ryan Beckett, tall, broad-shouldered, with a kind of smirk that suggested he had never been told no. And Captain Cole Brennan, shorter but built like a fire hydrant. Both radiated the unearned confidence of their rank. Beckett smirked down at her. "Well, well," he said, his voice loud enough for the surrounding tables to hear. "If it isn't Master Chief almost got a medal." His companion, Brennan, snickered, a juvenile, grating sound. Reese did not look up from her book. She slowly turned a page. The paper whispered in the sudden quiet around her table. Beckett's smirk tightened. Her lack of reaction was an irritant. "What's the matter, Chief?" he said. "Cat got your tongue? Or are you just busy writing a strongly worded email about how your feelings were hurt?" "Leave her alone, Captain," a voice grumbled from a nearby table. It was a Marine gunnery sergeant. His face was a road map of hard deployments, lines etched deep around his eyes and mouth. His name tape read, Garrett. Reese recognized him vaguely. A scout sniper instructor. She had seen him on the long-range rifle course a few months back. Beckett shot him a venomous look. "Mind your business, Gunny," he said. "This is an officer-to-enlisted conversation." He turned back to Reese, his arrogance inflated by the minor challenge. "The general was right, you know," he continued. "They hand out medals like candy these days. Dilutes the meaning for the real fighters." Reese carefully placed her fork on her tray. She closed her book, marking her page with a slip of paper. She still had not made eye contact with them. She prepared to stand and leave. Avoidance was the primary de-escalation tactic. Beckett, misinterpreting her silence as weakness and her movement as flight, decided to escalate. He reached out and placed a heavy, condescending hand on her shoulder. His fingers pressed down with deliberate weight, intending to stop her from rising, intending to assert dominance. "Hey," he said, "I'm not done talking to you, sailor." It was a tactical error of catastrophic proportions. The instant his fingers made contact, Reese's entire posture shifted. She did not tense up. She seemed to flow. Her center of gravity dropped by inches. Her left hand came up, not to strike, but to gently cover his hand on her shoulder. Her thumb pressed a precise point on the radial nerve at his wrist. Simultaneously, her body pivoted, not away from him, but into him, using his own forward momentum against him. Beckett's confident push became an uncontrolled stumble. Reese's other hand secured his elbow. It was not a punch, not a grab. It was a simple, fluid redirection. His arm was now locked, bent at an angle evolution had never intended. His own body weight created the strain. His confident smirk vanished, replaced by a mask of wide-eyed shock and sudden, blinding pain. He was completely off balance, his 6-foot frame held powerless by a woman half his size, all without a single blow being thrown. The entire sequence, from contact to control, had taken less than 2 seconds. The clatter in the dining facility died. Trays stopped moving. Conversations halted. Every eye was locked on the silent drama unfolding in the corner. Reese applied a whisper of additional pressure to the joint lock. Beckett let out a strangled gasp. His knees buckled slightly. She leaned in, her voice low and devoid of all emotion. It was not a threat. It was a statement of fact. "Do not touch me again." She released him as smoothly as she had taken control. Captain Beckett staggered back, clutching his arm. His face was a mixture of agony and utter humiliation. His partner, Brennan, stood frozen, his mouth half open, his tray still held uselessly in front of him. Reese calmly picked up her book. She picked up her tray. She looked at neither of them. She walked to the tray return window, deposited her dishes with the same methodical calm she brought to everything, and exited the dining facility without a backward glance. The room remained silent for a long moment. Then a low murmur started, spreading like a ripple across water. In the corner, Gunnery Sergeant Sullivan Garrett slowly shook his head. A look of grim, profound respect settled on his weathered face. He had seen her shoot on the range months ago, printing sub-minute of angle groups at 1,500 meters in a crosswind. He had always known she was more than she appeared. Now everyone else in the room knew it too. The narrative had begun to shift. Commander Harrison Kincaid rubbed his temples. The video was playing on a loop on his monitor. It was clear, undeniable, and a massive procedural headache. An Army captain, a general's aide no less, had been publicly and efficiently dismantled by one of his master chiefs. The video had been taken from at least 3 different angles: security cameras and personal cell phones. It was already circulating through the base network. "I have to file a report, Master Chief," he said, looking at Reese, who stood at parade rest in front of his desk. Her expression was placid, unreadable. "Captain Beckett has filed a formal complaint," Kincaid continued. "Assault." "I understand, Commander," she said. Her voice was calm, steady. "He claims you attacked him without provocation," Kincaid said. "That is an inaccurate statement," she replied. "I know it is," Kincaid said, gesturing at the screen. "I have eyes, but I have to follow procedure. I need your official statement." Reese produced a small gray data chip from her pocket. She placed it on his desk with a soft click. "My statement is on this drive, sir," she said. "It is a text file, time-stamped and digitally signed." Kincaid picked it up, curious. He turned it over in his fingers. "And what else is on here?" "The unedited source footage from the 3 dining facility security cameras covering the incident," she said, synchronized into a single timeline. "Audio recordings from 4 personal devices in the immediate vicinity, which I was able to isolate and enhance. Their metadata confirms they were actively recording. A topographical map of the dining facility indicating the positions of all parties and at least 15 witnesses, with rank and names included. And a frame-by-frame analysis of the physical contact, demonstrating that Captain Beckett initiated and that my response utilized minimal force necessary to neutralize a perceived physical threat, consistent with established rules of engagement for personal defense." Kincaid stared at the data chip in his hand. It was not a statement. It was a complete evidentiary package, assembled with the speed and ruthless efficiency of a counterintelligence operation. He was a decent officer, a man who believed in the system. But this level of preparation was something else entirely. He was beginning to understand that Master Chief Reese Dalton did not simply exist within the system. She operated it like a finely tuned instrument. "All right, Master Chief," he said, a new note of respect creeping into his voice. "I will attach this to my report and forward it up the chain. You are confined to quarters pending review. Understood?" "Understood, Commander," she said. She saluted, turned, and left his office. Kincaid sat alone in the silence. He plugged the drive into his computer. Everything she had described was there, perfectly organized, meticulously documented. He read her statement. It was 3 sentences long, as precise and unadorned as a technical schematic. At 18:05 Zulu, Captain Beckett and Captain Brennan approached my table. Captain Beckett made unsolicited verbal contact. He then initiated unsolicited physical contact. I responded with a standard joint control maneuver to ensure my safety and disengage. I then vacated the area. Kincaid attached the entire package to his report. He wrote a brief cover memo, and he sent it up the chain of command. It landed, as he knew it would, on the desk of Admiral Griffith Hawthorne. The inquiry was convened not in a dusty office, but in the sterile, high-tech Strategic Operations Center aboard the aircraft carrier USS Ronald Reagan, floating in the Arabian Sea. The room was a cathedral of modern warfare. Massive screens lined the walls, displaying real-time satellite feeds and tactical data. The air was cool, recycled. The hum of electronics was a constant background drone. Admiral Hawthorne presided. His presence filled the room with a quiet, pragmatic authority. He was 59 years old, a career naval officer who had risen through the ranks on merit and intelligence, not bluster. His hair was silver, his eyes were sharp. He was a man who listened more than he spoke. General Ironwood was there, flanked by his 2 aides, Beckett and Brennan. Ironwood's face was a thundercloud. Being summoned by a Navy admiral to discuss the conduct of his staff was a deep insult to his ego. Commander Kincaid was present, and so was Master Chief Reese Dalton. She stood alone, a small, still figure in the center of the room. A large holographic map of the theater of operations floated in the air between them, currently inert. "Let's be brief," Admiral Hawthorne began. His voice was calm but edged with steel. "General, your aide, Captain Beckett, has filed a complaint of assault against Master Chief Dalton. Captain, please state your case." Beckett, his arm in a completely unnecessary sling for dramatic effect, recounted his version of events. He painted himself as the victim, a concerned officer who had merely tried to have a friendly word with the Master Chief when she suddenly and viciously attacked him. His voice was practiced, his delivery smooth. Hawthorne listened patiently. His face betrayed nothing. When Beckett was finished, the Admiral nodded to a technician. "Play the dining facility footage," he said. All angles. The holographic display flickered to life. The incident played out from 3 different perspectives simultaneously. The audio was crisp and clear. Beckett's mocking words, his aggressive posture, his hand grabbing Reese's shoulder. It was all there, undeniable. Then the swift, economical, and perfectly controlled defensive maneuver. The room watched in silence. The video ended. Beckett's face turned a deep shade of crimson. "The video seems to contradict your statement, Captain," Hawthorne said mildly. "It appears you initiated physical contact. Master Chief Dalton's response appears to be a textbook application of non-lethal force. The complaint is dismissed." General Ironwood started to speak. Outrage colored his features. "Admiral, this is an affront to my—" Hawthorne held up a hand. Ironwood fell silent. "We are not finished, General," Hawthorne said. "This incident did not occur in a vacuum. It is my understanding that it stems from your actions at the awards ceremony 2 days prior." He turned his gaze to Reese. Master Chief, I have read the citation for your Bronze Star. It is vague. For the record, I would like you to clarify your specific contribution to Operation Serpent's Coil. This was the moment. Reese stepped forward. Permission to use the tactical display, Admiral. Granted. Reese interfaced with the holographic projector via a datapad. The map of the operational area zoomed in on a dense urban sector. A complex web of colored lines and symbols flooded the hologram. This is the electromagnetic spectrum of the target area for the 72 hours preceding the operation, she explained. Her voice was steady, the voice of a lecturer, clinical. It is saturated with civilian traffic, military communications, and background noise. The enemy used a polymorphic frequency-hopping communication system with encrypted burst transmissions designed to be indistinguishable from this noise. She manipulated the display. Most of the colored lines vanished, leaving a shimmering haze of what looked like digital static. Standard analysis could find no pattern, she continued. The signals were designed to mimic random atmospheric phenomena. However, no system is perfect. Every piece of hardware has a unique physical signature. A flaw in a crystal oscillator, a microsecond delay in a power amplifier. These create a recurring error. A digital fingerprint buried layers deep in the signal. Her fingers flew across the datapad. A single thread of light, impossibly faint, began to resolve within the static. It pulsed with a steady, rhythmic beat. I designed a polymorphic decryption algorithm, she said, but not for the content of the messages. It was designed to analyze the carrier wave itself, searching for this repeating hardware latency, a digital heartbeat. It took my system 48 hours to isolate it. The thread of light on the map solidified, leading to a single building in a crowded city block. I cross-referenced the signal's origin with thermal imaging from an RQ-170 Sentinel drone, which I had requested to the area. The building showed a heat signature consistent with multiple occupants and a significant amount of electronic equipment in a sublevel. She paused. The room was utterly silent. I passed this specific location, the single address, to the task force command at 0241 Zulu. The assault force, led by Major Sutherland, was dispatched to that location. They met resistance, neutralized the targets, and captured the ghost. They were sent to the objective based solely on the intelligence I provided. She finished. The holographic display froze on the single building, the faint heartbeat still pulsing. She had not raised her voice. She had presented no opinions. She had simply displayed the raw, unassailable data. She had not supported the raid. She had been its architect. She had pointed a finger through the digital fog and told the trigger pullers precisely where to go. General Ironwood was pale. The room held its breath. Admiral Hawthorne studied the display, then turned his gaze to the general. The inquiry was far from over. Admiral Hawthorne looked at Ironwood. His gaze was cold, unforgiving. "General," he said, his voice low, "your after-action report, which I have right here, credits aggressive patrolling by Alpha Company for locating the target. That is not just an error, that is a fabrication. You have misrepresented a tactical operation to your superiors and to the public. You have also publicly humiliated a decorated senior non-commissioned officer and illegally confiscated her award." The Admiral's gaze was unwavering. "This inquiry is concluded. My report to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs will reflect these findings." For a four-star general, this was a death sentence. His career was over. The room remained silent. No one moved. The holographic display still glowed. The thread of light still pulsed. A digital heartbeat that had changed everything. Reese stood at attention. Her face was calm. Her work was done. She had not sought this confrontation, but she had prepared for it. And when the moment came, she had delivered the truth with the same precision she brought to every signal she analyzed. The inquiry adjourned at 1730 hours. The officers filed out of the Strategic Operations Center in silence. General Ironwood departed flanked by two JAG officers, his face ashen, his once proud bearing diminished. Captain Beckett and Captain Brennan followed at a distance, their futures suddenly uncertain. Admiral Hawthorne remained behind, so did Commander Kincaid, and so did Reese Dalton. The Admiral stood at the holographic display, studying the frozen image of the target building. The thread of light still pulsed softly in the artificial twilight of the operations center. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he turned to face Reese. "Master Chief," he said, "that was the finest piece of technical work I have seen in 37 years of service." "Thank you, Admiral," Reese said. Her voice remained neutral, professional. Hawthorne walked closer. He studied her with the same intensity he had brought to the evidence. "You could have responded to General Ironwood's provocation with anger, with protest. Instead, you documented, you waited, you let the system work." "The system is built on process, sir," Reese said. "Emotion is noise. Facts are signal." A faint smile crossed the Admiral's weathered face. "Indeed." He glanced at Commander Kincaid. "Commander, Master Chief Dalton is released from quarters restriction. She is to return to full duty immediately." "Aye, sir," Kincaid said. Hawthorne turned back to Reese. "I am ordering a full review of General Ironwood's service record. Every operation, every citation, every after-action report. If there are other instances of misrepresentation, I intend to find them." He paused. "I suspect there are." Reese said nothing, but something flickered in her eyes. Recognition, perhaps, or vindication. "Dismissed, Master Chief," Hawthorne said. Reese saluted, turned, and left the operations center. In the corridor outside, the cool artificial air gave way to the oppressive heat of the carrier's upper decks. Reese made her way through the narrow passages, ascending ladders, navigating the labyrinth of steel and rivets. She emerged onto the flight deck. The sun was setting over the Arabian Sea, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The heat of the day was finally breaking. She stood at the edge of the deck, hands clasped behind her back, and watched the light fade. She had won. The system had worked. Truth had prevailed. But she felt no elation, no triumph, only a quiet satisfaction. A problem had been identified. A correction had been applied. The machine continued to function. "Master Chief," the voice came from behind her, gravelly, weathered. She turned. Gunnery Sergeant Sullivan Garrett stood a few feet away. He was out of uniform, wearing simple PT gear. His arms were thick with the kind of muscle that came from decades of hard work, not gym vanity. His face was lined and sun-damaged, the face of a man who had spent a lifetime in hard places. "Gunnery Sergeant," Reese acknowledged. Garrett moved to stand beside her at the railing. He looked out at the darkening sea. "I saw you shoot once," he said, "about 6 months ago, on the 1,000-yard range at Camp Leatherneck. You were zeroing a rifle. 338 Lapua, if I remember right." Reese nodded. "I remember. You were running a sniper course." "I watched you print a 4-inch group at 1,500 meters, Garrett said, "in a 12-mile-an-hour crosswind, without a spotter. I told my students that day, that's what mastery looks like." He glanced at her. "They didn't believe me, said you got lucky." "Luck is a variable I account for," Reese said. "Then I eliminate it." Garrett chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "I served in Iraq, 2003 through 2004, Fallujah, Ramadi, all the bad places." He was quiet for a moment. "I saw a lot of officers like Ironwood back then, old guard, men who thought warfare was still about bayonets and boots on the ground, men who couldn't adapt." "Adaptation is survival," Reese said. "It is," Garrett agreed. "But those men, they don't see it that way. To them, people like you are a threat. You represent change. You represent a battlefield they don't understand and can't control." He turned to face her fully. "Ironwood isn't finished with you, Master Chief. Men like him don't go quietly." Reese met his gaze. I documented everything, Gunnery Sergeant. The facts are in the system now. They cannot be erased. Facts don't stop spite, Garrett said. And Ironwood has friends, powerful friends. He paused. But so do you now. If you need anything, you come find me. Understood? Understood, Reese said. Garrett nodded. He started to leave, then stopped. One more thing. That joint lock you put on Captain Beckett. Where did you learn that? Krav Maga, Reese said. Israeli Defense Force hand-to-hand combat system. I cross-trained with their naval commandos during an exchange program 3 years ago. Garrett smiled. A genuine smile this time. Of course you did. He walked away, disappearing into the superstructure of the carrier. Reese remained at the railing. The last light faded from the sky. Stars began to appear, sharp and clear in the dry air above the sea. She stood there until full darkness fell. Then she returned below decks to her quarters. She had work to do. Admiral Hawthorne had not been exaggerating when he said he intended a full review. The directive came down through channels within 24 hours. Every operation General Marcus Ironwood had commanded or been credited with over the past 15 years was to be subjected to forensic analysis. After-action reports, intelligence summaries, personnel records, communications logs, everything. The work was assigned to a small team of intelligence analysts and JAG officers. But the heart of the investigation fell to a handful of people who understood modern battlefield intelligence, and Reese Dalton was one of them. She sat in a secure compartment deep in the bowels of the USS Reagan, surrounded by 3 other analysts. The room was cramped. The air was stale. The only light came from the glow of multiple monitors. They worked in shifts, around the clock, pulling apart years of operational data. It took them 4 days to find the first discrepancy. Operation Desert Scorpion, 2008, Northern Iraq. Ironwood had been a colonel then, commanding a brigade combat team. The after-action report credited a successful raid on an insurgent weapons cache to, quote, tactical genius and aggressive reconnaissance by ground elements, unquote. But when Reese pulled the original intelligence summaries, a different picture emerged. The weapons cache had been located by an Air Force intelligence officer, a woman, Captain Vanessa Holt. She had identified the location through detailed analysis of satellite imagery, cross-referenced with intercepted communications and local informant reports. Her name appeared nowhere in the after-action report. Reese dug deeper. She found Captain Holt's original intelligence package, time-stamped, submitted 48 hours before the raid. The coordinates she provided matched the raid location exactly. It was not a lucky guess. It was not aggressive patrolling. It was precision intelligence work. Reese pulled Captain Holt's service record. She had retired from the Air Force in 2009, 1 year after the operation. Her final performance review was mediocre, lukewarm. It mentioned nothing about her contribution to Desert Scorpion. The second discrepancy appeared 2 days later, Operation Iron Anvil, 2010, Afghanistan. Ironwood, now a brigadier general, had commanded a task force targeting a Taliban logistics network. The after-action report again praised bold leadership and kinetic action. But the intelligence summaries told a different story. The logistics network had been mapped by an Army signals intelligence specialist, Warrant Officer Jessica Reyes. She had spent 3 months tracking communications patterns, building a network diagram of the enemy organization. Her analysis had identified every major node in the network, every safe house, every cache, every courier route. The assault force had followed her map like a treasure hunt. Her name appeared in the intelligence annex, buried on page 47 of a 50-page document. A single line, no commendation, no recognition. Reese found her service record too. Warrant Officer Reyes had separated from the Army in 2011. Her exit interview cited frustration with lack of career advancement opportunities. The pattern was undeniable. Reese compiled her findings into a report. She included Captain Holt's intelligence package, Warrant Officer Reyes's network analysis, side-by-side comparisons with the after-action reports, timestamps, metadata, the digital fingerprints that proved beyond doubt that these women had done the work, and Ironwood had taken the credit. She submitted the report to Admiral Hawthorne through Commander Kincaid. The response came back within an hour. Admiral Hawthorne wanted to see her personally. She arrived at the Admiral's quarters at 800 the next morning. The space was Spartan, functional. A desk, a bunk, a small table with 2 chairs, maps on the walls. No personal effects except a single photograph of a woman and 2 grown children. Hawthorne was reading her report on a tablet. He did not look up when she entered. She stood at attention and waited. Finally, he set the tablet down. He looked tired, older than he had seemed just days before. "Master Chief," he said, "this is worse than I thought." "Yes, sir," Reese said. "2 instances are a coincidence," Hawthorne said. 3 would be a pattern." He tapped the tablet. "How many more do you think are out there?" "Unknown, Admiral," Reese said. "But given the consistency of the methodology in the 15-year span of General Ironwood's career at this level, I estimate at least 5 to 7 additional instances." Hawthorne leaned back in his chair. He rubbed his face with both hands. "This is not just about stolen valor," he said. "This is about institutional failure. These women did exceptional work. They deserved recognition. They deserved career advancement. Instead, they were erased, and the military lost them." "Yes, sir," Reese said. "I need you to find them," Hawthorne said. "Captain Holt, Warrant Officer Reyes, anyone else. I want to contact them. I want to offer formal apologies, and I want to see if there is anything we can do to make this right, even belatedly." "Understood, Admiral," Reese said. "And Master Chief," Hawthorne added, "this stays contained for now. If word gets out prematurely, Ironwood's allies will try to spin it. Control the narrative. I want an airtight case before this goes public." "Aye, sir," Reese said. She returned to her workspace and began the search. Captain Vanessa Holt was not difficult to find. She lived in Colorado Springs. She worked as a civilian contractor for a defense intelligence company. Reese found her email address through professional networking sites. She drafted a message, carefully worded. She explained who she was, what she was investigating, and that Admiral Hawthorne wished to speak with her. She sent the message at 1300 hours. The response came back at 1545 hours. It was brief. "I remember Operation Desert Scorpion. I remember submitting that intelligence package. I remember waiting for acknowledgement that never came. I would be happy to speak with the Admiral. Thank you for reaching out." Warrant Officer Jessica Reyes was harder to track. She had separated from the military and seemed to have disappeared from public records. No LinkedIn profile, no social media presence, no current address listed in any database Reese could access through official channels. Reese expanded her search. She pulled Reyes's final duty station, Fort Gordon, Georgia. She contacted the personnel office. They had a forwarding address from 2011. It was in Texas, a small town outside San Antonio. Reese called the local post office. She identified herself and explained she was trying to locate a former service member for official military business. The postal clerk was hesitant, but eventually confirmed that a Jessica Reyes had received mail at that address until 2013. Then the forwarding order had expired. Dead end. Reese sat back in her chair. She stared at the monitor. There had to be another way. She accessed military medical records. Reyes had been treated for a shoulder injury in 2010. The treatment had continued for 6 months. Physical therapy. The records listed the name of the physical therapist, a contractor who worked at multiple military installations. Reese found the contractor's current employment. Still working, still doing physical therapy for veterans. Based out of San Antonio. She called the clinic. She explained she was trying to locate a former patient for an important matter. The receptionist could not give out patient information, but agreed to pass along a message. Reese left her contact information and a brief explanation. 2 hours later, her phone rang. "This is Jessica Reyes," the voice on the other end said, cautious, uncertain. "Ms. Reyes," Reese said, "thank you for calling me back. My name is Master Chief Reese Dalton. I am currently assigned to a task force investigating operational reporting discrepancies related to General Marcus Ironwood." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "I see," Reyes finally said. Her voice was flat, guarded. "I have reviewed the intelligence package you submitted for Operation Iron Anvil in 2010, Reese continued. "Your network analysis was extraordinary. It directly led to the success of that operation. But your contribution was not acknowledged in the after-action report." Another silence. "No," Reyes said quietly, "it was not." "Admiral Griffith Hawthorne would like to speak with you," Reese said. "He wants to apologize on behalf of the military, and he wants to discuss what can be done to correct the record." "Why now?" Reyes asked. There was an edge in her voice, anger maybe, or pain. "It has been over a decade." "Because the pattern has finally been exposed," Reese said. "Because you were not the only one, and because it is the right thing to do." Reyes was quiet for a long time. Reese waited. She did not push. "All right," Reyes said finally. "I will speak with the Admiral." Reese arranged the call. Admiral Hawthorne spoke with both women over the next 48 hours. Reese was not privy to the conversations, but she saw the Admiral's face afterward. He looked older still, worn down by the weight of institutional injustice. "They were gracious," he told Reese. "More gracious than I deserved. More gracious than the institution deserved." "What did you offer them, sir?" Reese asked. "The truth," Hawthorne said. "I told them their work would be formally recognized. Their names would be added to the official records. And I told them I would do everything in my power to make sure this never happens again." He paused. Captain Holt asked for nothing. Warrant Officer Reyes asked for only one thing. "What was that, sir?" "She asked if the women currently serving would be treated differently," Hawthorne said. "If we had learned anything." Reese said nothing. The question hung in the air between them. "I told her I hoped so," Hawthorne said, "but I could not promise. All I could promise was that I would fight for it." The investigation continued. A third instance was found, then a fourth. Each one followed the same pattern: exceptional intelligence work by female specialists, credit diverted to General Ironwood and his ground commanders, names buried or erased, careers stalled or ended. By the end of the second week, the team had documented 6 separate operations spanning 12 years. The evidence was overwhelming, and it was damning. Admiral Hawthorne prepared his report for the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. It was 40 pages long, meticulously documented, unsparing in its conclusions. General Marcus Ironwood had systematically stolen credit from subordinates, particularly female intelligence specialists, to advance his own career. He had falsified official reports. He had violated the trust of his command, and he had damaged the institution he was sworn to serve. The report recommended immediate court-martial proceedings. But before the report could be submitted, word leaked. Reese was in her workspace when Commander Kincaid burst in, tablet in hand. His face was grim. "Master Chief," he said, "we have a problem. Someone leaked the investigation to the press." Reese looked up from her monitor. Her expression did not change. "How much?" "Enough," Kincaid said. "The general outline, the pattern of credit theft, the names of some of the women involved." Reese nodded slowly. She had anticipated this possibility. In an investigation involving this many people, operational security was nearly impossible to maintain. "How is Admiral Hawthorne handling it?" "He is moving up the timeline," Kincaid said. "The report goes to the chairman today. Court-martial proceedings will be expedited." He paused. This is going to get loud, Master Chief. Media, congressional inquiries, the whole circus. I understand, Reese said. Are you prepared for that? Kincaid asked. Reese turned back to her monitor. The facts speak for themselves, Commander. Everything else is noise. It was inevitable, perhaps. Too many people were involved. Too many documents had been accessed. Someone talked. And once the first whisper escaped, the story spread like fire through dry grass. Within 24 hours, it was on military blogs. Within 48 hours, it had reached mainstream media. The New York Times ran a front-page story. Decorated general accused of systemic credit theft, targeting female intelligence officers. The reaction was swift and predictable. Ironwood's defenders rallied. They called it a witch hunt, a politically motivated attack. They claimed the evidence was circumstantial. They argued that after-action reports were always simplified and that ground commanders deserved credit for executing operations, regardless of who provided the intelligence. But the evidence was too strong, the pattern too clear, and the women were willing to speak. Captain Vanessa Holt gave an interview. She was calm, articulate. She described her work on Operation Desert Scorpion in detail. She showed the original intelligence package. She explained how she had felt when her name was omitted from the final report, how she had raised the issue with her superiors and been told it was not important, how she had realized her career would never advance in an environment that did not value her contributions. The interview went viral. Warrant Officer Jessica Reyes followed. She was more emotional, more raw. She spoke about the months she had spent building the network analysis for Iron Anvil, the late nights, the missed meals, the obsessive focus required to piece together the puzzle, and the crushing disappointment when the operation succeeded and she was not even mentioned at the briefing. I did not do it for glory, she said in the interview. Her voice cracked slightly. I did it to save lives, to help the guys on the ground. But I did expect to be acknowledged, to be seen, to be told that my work mattered. The public response was overwhelming. Veterans groups issued statements of support. Congressional representatives called for investigations. The hashtag Acknowledge Her Service trended on social media. And through it all, Reese Dalton remained silent. She did not give interviews. She did not speak to the press. She simply continued her work, analyzing data, documenting facts, letting the evidence speak. But the world was speaking for her now. The invisible warrior had forced the institution to see what it had refused to see for decades, and there would be no going back. General Marcus Ironwood was formally charged with conduct unbecoming an officer, making false official statements, and dereliction of duty. His court-martial was scheduled for 6 weeks out. His rank was suspended. His security clearance was revoked. He was confined to quarters at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, awaiting trial. The machine of military justice was in motion, slow, deliberate, unforgiving. And aboard the USS Ronald Reagan, in a small compartment lit only by the glow of computer screens, Reese Dalton prepared for the next phase. The court-martial would require testimony, evidence presentation, cross-examination. She would be called as a witness, and she would be ready. She had spent her entire career finding signals in noise, finding truth in chaos, finding needles in haystacks. This was no different. The facts were clear, the pattern was undeniable, and justice, however slow, was coming. She saved her files. She backed up her data. She triple-checked her documentation. Then she stood, stretched, and walked to the small porthole in the compartment wall. Outside, the Arabian Sea stretched to the horizon, dark, vast, unknowable. But beneath that surface, invisible to the eye, currents flowed. Patterns emerged, and those who knew how to read them could navigate even the deepest waters. Reese Dalton had spent her life reading invisible patterns, and now the world was finally learning to see them too. The court-martial of General Marcus Ironwood began on a cold morning in November at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. The military courtroom was austere. Polished wood panels, the American flag and the Army flag flanking the judge's bench. Rows of seats for observers, packed with officers, enlisted personnel, and media representatives. The air was heavy with anticipation. Reese Dalton sat in the witness waiting room. She wore her service dress blues, every ribbon perfectly aligned, every crease razor sharp. Her hands rested calmly in her lap. She had been preparing for this moment for 6 weeks. She had reviewed every document, memorized every timestamp, rehearsed her testimony until it was as precise as a ballistics calculation. Commander Kincaid sat beside her. He had flown in from the carrier to provide support. "You ready, Master Chief?" he asked. "Yes, sir," Reese said. "It is going to be intense in there," Kincaid said. "Ironwood's defense counsel is a former JAG colonel, Bradley Thorne. He has a reputation for being aggressive. He will try to rattle you." "I understand," Reese said. "Just stick to the facts," Kincaid said. "Answer the questions. Do not let him bait you." Reese nodded. The facts were all she had. They were all she needed. The bailiff opened the door. "Master Chief Dalton, you are up." Reese stood. She smoothed her uniform once, a habitual gesture. Then she walked into the courtroom. The room fell silent as she entered. Every eye tracked her movement to the witness stand. She saw General Ironwood at the defense table. He looked diminished. His uniform was correct, but somehow less imposing without the stars on his shoulders. His face was hard, unrepentant. His eyes locked onto hers with undisguised contempt. She did not look away. The military judge, Colonel Patricia Dunham, was a stern woman in her mid-50s. She had presided over dozens of courts-martial. Her reputation was unimpeachable. She gestured to the witness stand. "Master Chief Dalton," she said, "please be seated." Reese sat. The bailiff administered the oath. She raised her right hand and swore to tell the truth. Her voice was steady. The prosecution began. Captain Andrew Frost was a JAG officer in his early 40s. He was methodical, thorough. He walked Reese through her background, her training, her assignment to the task force, the events leading up to Operation Serpent's Coil. Then he asked her to explain her role in the operation. Reese took a breath. She looked at the jury, 8 officers of varying ranks, all with combat experience, all watching her intently. "The objective of Operation Serpent's Coil," she began, "was to locate and neutralize a high-value target known as the Ghost. He was the leader of a regional insurgent network. He was extremely difficult to track because his organization practiced strict emissions control. They used advanced frequency-hopping communications designed to blend into background noise." She continued, describing the electromagnetic environment, the challenges of isolating enemy signals in a saturated spectrum, the algorithm she had designed, the painstaking process of identifying the hardware signature, the cross-referencing with thermal imaging, the final coordinates she had provided. Captain Frost introduced Exhibit A, the original intelligence package Reese had submitted. Time-stamped at 0241 Zulu, he displayed it on the courtroom monitors. "Master Chief Dalton," he said, "is this the intelligence package you submitted?" "Yes, sir," Reese said. "And what happened after you submitted this package?" "The assault force was dispatched to the coordinates I provided," Reese said. "They conducted the raid at 0630 Zulu the same day. They neutralized hostile forces and captured the Ghost." "Did the assault force conduct any independent reconnaissance to verify your intelligence?" "No, sir. The timeline did not permit it. The decision was made to trust the intelligence and act immediately." "So the success of the operation depended entirely on the accuracy of your intelligence?" "Yes, sir." Captain Frost introduced Exhibit B, General Ironwood's after-action report. He read aloud the relevant passage. "Success attributed to aggressive patrolling by Alpha Company and the tactical acumen of ground commanders. He looked at Reese. Master Chief, is this an accurate description of how the target was located? No, sir, Reese said. It is not. How would you describe it? It is a fabrication, Reese said. Her voice was calm, clinical. Alpha Company did not patrol to find the target. They were directed to a specific address based on signals intelligence. There was no independent ground reconnaissance. Captain Frost nodded. He turned to the judge. No further questions, Your Honor. Colonel Dunham looked at the defense table. Mr. Thorne, your witness. Bradley Thorne stood. He was tall, silver-haired. He moved with the confidence of a man who had won far more cases than he had lost. He approached the witness stand slowly, studying Reese like a specimen under glass. Master Chief Dalton, he began. His voice was smooth, almost friendly. You have an impressive service record. Bronze Star, Navy Commendation Medal, multiple unit citations. You are clearly a skilled intelligence specialist. Thank you, sir, Reese said. But you have never been in combat, have you? Thorne said. By combat, I mean direct engagement with the enemy, kicking in doors, taking fire, that sort of thing. Captain Frost stood. Objection, relevance. Your Honor, Thorne said, I am establishing the witness's perspective and experience relative to the nature of combat operations. Overruled, Dunham said, but get to your point, Mr. Thorne. Thorne turned back to Reese. Master Chief, I have not engaged in direct kinetic combat operations, Reese said. My role is signals intelligence. So you have never been shot at, Thorne said. That is incorrect, Reese said. I have been under indirect fire on multiple occasions. Mortar attacks, rocket attacks. I have conducted field intelligence operations in hostile territory, but I have not personally engaged enemy combatants with a weapon. Thorne smiled, a thin, calculated smile. So you provide information, you analyze data, you make recommendations, but you do not pull triggers. That is correct, Reese said. And yet you are here today claiming that you, not the soldiers who actually conducted the raid, deserve credit for the success of Operation Serpent's Coil. Objection, Captain Frost said, mischaracterizes the testimony. Sustained, Dunham said. Rephrase, Mr. Thorne. Thorne nodded. Master Chief, do you believe that intelligence is more important than execution in combat operations? Reese paused. She considered the question carefully. I believe both are equally important. Without accurate intelligence, execution is dangerous and often unsuccessful. Without skilled execution, even perfect intelligence is useless. They are interdependent. But in your testimony, Thorne said, you stated that General Ironwood's after-action report was a fabrication. That is a strong word. You are essentially calling a decorated general a liar. I am stating that the after-action report does not accurately reflect how the target was located, Reese said. That is a matter of fact, not opinion. Facts, Thorne said. He walked back to the defense table and picked up a document. Let me present some facts of my own. General Ironwood commanded that task force. He was responsible for the overall operation. He made the decision to authorize the raid based on your intelligence. He coordinated air support. He managed logistics. He took responsibility for the lives of over 200 soldiers. Is that correct? Yes, sir, Reese said. So he did far more than you did, Thorne said. He performed a different role, Reese said. Command and execution. My role was intelligence acquisition and analysis. A support role, Thorne said. An intelligence role, Reese corrected. Thorne smiled again. Master Chief, is it possible that you are simply upset because you did not receive the level of recognition you believe you deserved? That this entire case is driven by wounded pride? Captain Frost stood. Objection, argumentative and speculative. Sustained, Dunham said, but Thorne had made his point. He let the question hang in the air for a moment. Then he shifted direction. Master Chief, you documented General Ironwood's actions at the awards ceremony. You filed reports. You preserved video evidence. You prepared what amounts to a legal case against him. Is that correct? I documented the incident, yes, Reese said. That seems like a lot of effort for someone who claims not to care about recognition, Thorne said. I documented it because it was a breach of protocol, Reese said, and because it was part of a larger pattern that needed to be addressed. A pattern, Thorne said. You are referring to the allegations that General Ironwood systematically failed to credit female intelligence specialists in his after-action reports. Yes, sir. And you took it upon yourself to investigate this pattern. I was assigned to assist in the investigation by Admiral Hawthorne, Reese said. But you went beyond your assigned duties, did you not? Thorne said. You tracked down former service members. You contacted them. You encouraged them to come forward. I facilitated communication at the direction of Admiral Hawthorne, Reese said. You orchestrated a campaign against General Ironwood, Thorne said. Objection, Captain Frost said. That is not what the evidence shows. Sustained, Dunham said. Mr. Thorne, stick to the facts. Thorne nodded. He walked back to the witness stand. He leaned against the railing, adopting a casual posture. Master Chief, let me ask you this. Do you believe that women face discrimination in the military? Reese met his eyes. I believe that discrimination exists in many forms, in many places. The military is not immune. And do you believe you have been discriminated against? I believe my work has been accurately assessed by those who understand its value, Reese said, and I believe it has been misunderstood or dismissed by those who do not. That is not an answer, Thorne said. It is the only answer I can give, Reese said. I cannot speak to the motivations of others. I can only speak to the facts of what occurred. Thorne studied her for a long moment. She did not flinch, did not waver. He realized he was not going to break her. She was too disciplined, too prepared. No further questions, he said finally. Reese was excused. She stood and walked out of the courtroom with the same measured calm she had brought in. Outside, in the hallway, she allowed herself a single deep breath. Then she composed herself and returned to the waiting room. Commander Kincaid was there. You did well, Master Chief, he said. Thank you, sir, Reese said. The court-martial continued for 3 more days. Captain Vanessa Holt testified. She was poised and articulate. She described her work on Operation Desert Scorpion in meticulous detail. She presented her original intelligence package. She explained how it had been ignored in the official record. The defense tried the same tactics. Thorne questioned her motivations, suggested she was bitter about her career, implied she was exaggerating her contributions. But Holt was unshakable. She had the documents, she had the timestamps, she had the truth. Warrant Officer Jessica Reyes testified next. She was more emotional than Holt. Her voice cracked at times, but her testimony was devastating. She described the months of work she had put into mapping the Taliban logistics network, the network diagram she had built, the precision with which the assault force had followed her analysis, and the silence that had followed. No commendation, no recognition, not even a thank you. I felt invisible, she said, like my work did not matter, like I did not matter. The defense had no effective counter. The pattern was too clear, the evidence too overwhelming. On the 4th day, the prosecution rested. The defense called General Ironwood to the stand. It was a calculated risk. Thorne believed that Ironwood's command presence and decorated service record would sway the jury. He was wrong. Ironwood was defiant. He defended his after-action reports as standard practice. He argued that command decisions were complex and that giving credit to intelligence specialists would undermine the authority of ground commanders. He claimed that the controversy was politically motivated, an attack on traditional military values. But under cross-examination by Captain Frost, Ironwood's defense crumbled. Frost methodically walked him through each operation, each falsified report, each omitted name. He presented the evidence in parallel, the intelligence packages on one side, the after-action reports on the other. The discrepancies were glaring. General Ironwood, Frost said, did Master Chief Dalton's intelligence directly lead to the capture of the Ghost? Intelligence was a factor, Ironwood said. A factor, Frost repeated. General, did Alpha Company conduct independent reconnaissance that led them to the target location? They executed the raid, Ironwood said. That is not what I asked, Frost said. Did they independently locate the target? Ironwood hesitated. No. So Master Chief Dalton's intelligence was not a factor, Frost said. It was the determining factor. Intelligence is always part of the equation, Ironwood said. Then why does your after-action report not mention her? Frost asked. It mentions Signals Intelligence Support, Ironwood said. But not by name, Frost said. Why not? Ironwood had no good answer. He stammered, he deflected, he grew angry, and in his anger he revealed what everyone in the room already suspected. He did not believe intelligence specialists deserved recognition, especially not female intelligence specialists. To him, they were support, secondary, invisible. The jury saw it, the judge saw it, everyone in the courtroom saw it. The defense rested. Closing arguments were delivered. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. They returned with a verdict. Guilty on all counts. Reese was not in the courtroom when the verdict was read. She was back aboard the USS Ronald Reagan by then, which had returned to port in Bahrain for resupply. She received the news via secure message from Commander Kincaid. She read the message once, then she closed her laptop and sat in silence for a long moment. Justice had been served. The system had worked. But she felt no triumph, only a quiet sense of completion. A problem had been solved. A correction had been applied. The machine continued to function. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. General Marcus Ironwood was stripped of his rank, dishonorably discharged, his pension reduced, his legacy in ruins. He would spend no time in prison. The military justice system rarely imposed confinement for nonviolent offenses committed by senior officers. But the public disgrace was punishment enough. He had lost everything that mattered to him: his reputation, his authority, his place in history. And in the aftermath, the institution began to change. Admiral Hawthorne issued a directive. All after-action reports going forward would include detailed attribution for intelligence contributions. Names, roles, specific actions. No more vague language about support. No more erasure. A review board was established to examine historical reports and identify other instances of misattributed credit. The board was empowered to correct the official record and issue belated commendations. Captain Vanessa Holt was awarded the Bronze Star for her work on Operation Desert Scorpion. Posthumously, in a sense. The medal could not restore her military career, but it acknowledged, finally, that her work had mattered. Warrant Officer Jessica Reyes was awarded the Meritorious Service Medal for her contributions to Operation Iron Anvil. She attended the ceremony at Fort Gordon. She wore civilian clothes. She was no longer part of the military, but she stood straight when the medal was pinned, and when the general who presented it saluted her, she returned it crisply. 4 other women received similar recognition for operations that had occurred years earlier. Their names were added to the official records, their contributions acknowledged at last. It was not enough. It could never be enough. But it was something, a signal that the institution was learning, slowly, imperfectly, but learning nonetheless. And then, 6 weeks after the verdict, Admiral Hawthorne issued orders for a second ceremony. This one was different. It was not about correcting past mistakes. It was about honoring present valor. The entire task force was assembled on the parade ground at FOB Sentinel once more. The same ground where General Ironwood had humiliated Reese Dalton 4 months earlier. But the atmosphere was entirely different now. There was no media, no cameras. This was for the task force alone. Admiral Hawthorne stood at the podium. His voice carried across the silent ranks. In any large organization, he began, errors can be made. Good organizations have the integrity to identify those errors and the courage to correct them. We are here today to correct an error. He called her name. Master Chief Petty Officer Reese Dalton. Reese walked forward. The same economical movements, the same perfect stillness. She halted before the Admiral and saluted. Hawthorne held the Bronze Star Medal. It was the same one from 4 months before. He had made a point of retrieving it from the evidence locker where it had been stored during the court-martial. Master Chief, he said, on behalf of the United States Armed Forces, I apologize. The words hung in the air. An apology from an admiral to an enlisted sailor. Unprecedented, powerful. Your skill and your dedication saved American lives and ensured the success of a critical mission, Hawthorne continued. We are honored by your service. He leaned forward and carefully pinned the medal to her uniform, just above her service ribbons, where it had always belonged. He stepped back and rendered a slow, deliberate salute. For a moment, he held it alone. Then, from the front rank, Marine Gunnery Sergeant Sullivan Garrett snapped his own hand up in a salute of razor-sharp precision. The sound of it seemed to break a spell. A wave of motion followed. Every single soldier, sailor, airman, and Marine on that parade ground, thousands of them, raised their hands in salute to the small, quiet woman standing before them. It was a thunderous, silent roar of respect. Reese held her own salute. Her eyes were dry. Her face was composed. But something shifted inside her. A weight she had carried for so long, the weight of invisibility, lifted. Not entirely, but enough. The salutes held for a long moment. Then the Admiral dropped his hand. The rest followed. The formation dismissed. But people did not leave immediately. They lingered. They talked. And more than a few approached Reese to shake her hand, to thank her, to tell her their own stories of being overlooked or underestimated. She listened to each one. She remembered their names. She told them their work mattered. Because it did. Later that day, Reese found herself on the long-distance rifle range. It was her place of solitude, the place where the world made sense. She was calculating windage and Coriolis drift for a 2,000-meter shot when she heard footsteps behind her. Gunnery Sergeant Garrett approached. He stopped a few feet away. He did not speak for a long moment. He simply watched her make her calculations, respecting her process. Master Chief, he finally said. She turned her head slightly, acknowledging him. Garrett reached up and removed the patch from his uniform's shoulder pocket. It was the iconic emblem of a United States Marine Corps scout sniper. A skull superimposed over a crosshair with the words, "One shot, one kill." It was a symbol of extreme proficiency, an insignia of a brotherhood earned through immense hardship and skill. He held it out to her. "The guys at the schoolhouse," he said, "we heard what you did, not in the DFAC, in the ether, finding that needle in a haystack full of needles." He paused. "That was the finest piece of marksmanship I have ever seen. Different weapon, same principle, one shot, one kill." Reese looked at the patch, then at the man. She understood the depth of the gesture. It was the highest form of professional respect he could offer. She reached into her own pocket and retrieved a spare patch. It was a simple black circle. In the center was a stylized phoenix, its wings made of radio waves rising from flames. Below it, embroidered in silver thread, was the Latin motto of her unit, Fides in Tenebris, faith in darkness. She took his patch and handed him hers. No other words were needed. The exchange was a treaty of mutual respect between two masters of their respective crafts. Garrett nodded. He tucked the phoenix patch away carefully, then he left her to her solitude. Reese returned to her calculations. She adjusted for wind, for temperature, for the curvature of the Earth itself. She chambered around, settled into position, contained her breathing, and squeezed the trigger. The rifle bucked against her shoulder. The sound rolled across the empty range. 2,000 meters downrange, the target pinged. Center mass. One shot. One kill. She smiled, a rare expression for her. A moment of pure satisfaction in the perfection of applied physics. Then she packed up her rifle and walked back to base. 2 days later, Commander Kincaid entered her workspace. He walked softly, as he always did when approaching her during work. He stood beside her for a moment, watching the streams of data flow across her monitors. "Master Chief," he began, his tone formal but colored with deep respect. "I just got off a secure video call with the Director of National Intelligence. He read Admiral Hawthorne's report." He paused for effect. "Your next assignment has been approved. Project Trident." Reese's eyes remained on her screen, but there was a flicker of acknowledgement, a brief tightening around her eyes that might have been excitement, or might have been focus sharpening even further. Project Trident was the bleeding edge, a program so classified that most of the intelligence community only knew it as a rumor. It was the place where the very best went, the ones who could see patterns no one else could see, the ones who could find signals in the deepest noise. "About what happened here," Kincaid continued, "with General Ironwood, the ceremony, all of it, I am sorry you had to go through that." Reese finally turned her head from the glowing tactical display. Her face was calm, illuminated by the shifting blue light of the hologram. There was no trace of vindication, no hint of triumph. There was only the quiet focus of a professional whose work was done and whose next task was already loading. "Correction was achieved," she said. Kincaid smiled slightly. He nodded. He understood. That was all that needed to be said. He left her workspace. Reese returned to her screens. A new operational area was loading. A new puzzle waiting to be solved. Somewhere in the electromagnetic spectrum, hidden beneath layers of encryption and noise, there was a signal, a pattern, a thread of light waiting to be found, and she would find it, because that was what she did. 6 months passed. The story of General Ironwood's court-martial faded from the news cycle, replaced by other scandals and crises. But within the military, the impact lingered. Changes were implemented. Training was updated. The culture shifted. Not overnight, not completely, but measurably. Reese Dalton transferred to Project Trident. Her work became even more classified, even more critical. She operated in a world most people did not know existed, a world of invisible threats and invisible victories, a world where the wars were fought in milliseconds and terabytes, where the battlefield was everywhere and nowhere. She thrived in that world. And occasionally, late at night, when the operations center was quiet and the rest of her team had gone to sleep, she would pull up an old file. The video from that ceremony at FOB Sentinel. She would watch it once, see General Ironwood slip the medal into his pocket, see herself walk away in silence, and then she would close the file and return to work. Because the past was data, and data was only useful if you learned from it. The culture had changed a little. The institution had gotten a little stronger. The invisible warriors were a little less invisible. And in the silent spaces between antennas, in the invisible wars fought in the electromagnetic spectrum, Reese Dalton continued her work. One signal at a time, one pattern at a time, one enemy at a time. The battlefield had evolved. Some warriors fought with bullets, some fought with bites. Both required courage. Both demanded sacrifice. Both deserved honor. And finally, slowly, the institution was learning to see that. The invisible war continued, but its warriors were no longer fighting alone. They were seen, they were valued, they were acknowledged, and that made all the difference. Project Trident facility, 18 months later, Master Chief Reese Dalton stood in front of a classroom of young intelligence specialists. 12 faces looked back at her. 6 men, 6 women, all the best and brightest from their respective services, all handpicked for the most classified program in the intelligence community. Signal intelligence, she began, is not about technology. It is not about algorithms or processing power. It is about understanding that every transmission, every broadcast, every whisper in the electromagnetic spectrum tells a story. Your job is to listen, to find the patterns, to separate signal from noise. She paused. Let the words sink in. Some of you will face situations where your work is not understood, where your contributions are questioned, where you are told that what you do is support, not combat. Her voice was steady, clinical, but there was something underneath, something hard-won. When that happens, remember this. The battlefield has evolved. Victory does not always come from the loudest gun or the boldest charge. Sometimes it comes from the quietest voice in the room who sees what no one else can see. She looked at each face, memorizing them. Your work matters. You matter. Never let anyone convince you otherwise. One of the students, a young Navy lieutenant, raised her hand. Master Chief, is it true you were at the center of the Ironwood case? Reese was quiet for a moment. She had known the question would come eventually. It always did. I was involved, she said simply. I did my job. The system worked. That is all that needs to be said. But you changed things, the lieutenant pressed. You changed how the military recognizes intelligence work. Reese shook her head slightly. I did not change anything. I documented facts. I presented evidence. The institution chose to listen. That is how it should work. She paused. Now, let us discuss signal propagation in urban environments. The class moved on. But the lieutenant's words lingered in Reese's mind long after the session ended. That evening, she found herself back at the long-range rifle course. It had become her ritual, the place where clarity came. She settled into firing position. 2,000 meters downrange, the target waited. Wind, temperature, humidity, Coriolis. She calculated them all, chambered around, controlled her breathing, and in that moment before the trigger pull, she thought about all of it. The ceremony, the humiliation, the investigation, the court-martial, the women who had come forward, the institution that had finally listened. She thought about Captain Holt and Warrant Officer Reyes, about the young lieutenant in her classroom, about all the invisible warriors fighting battles no one saw. She squeezed the trigger. The rifle bucked. The sound rolled across the range. 2,000 meters away, the target pinged, dead center. One shot, one kill. Reese Dalton smiled, packed up her rifle, and walked back toward the lights of the facility. The invisible war continued. It always would. But its warriors were no longer invisible. And that changed everything.